You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Mighty Blue podcast. I'm sorry that it's late again, but I'm trying to plan the hiking around the podcast, and that doesn't always align so perfectly as you could imagine. You should get this episode at around 1 p.m. on Thursday, so only about 10 hours late. This situation is likely going to get worse as I progress, but I'll be trying my hardest to keep on schedule as much as I can. And I know that I've got your empathy at least, and you can see why sometimes you want to get these things out on time. It just doesn't work out in that way. But I'm trying my hardest. We are well and truly into New Hampshire now, and today you're going to hear about Mount Moosilauke, the first of the big mountains in New Hampshire. I said the other day that entering New Hampshire, it did feel like stepping up a few gears, and even though I'm not going to be talking about it today, the day after Moosilauke, we went to the Kinsman's, and let me tell you, that was quite a day as well. I was hiking with Nuke, obviously, but also I was hiking with Breadcrumbs yesterday for a little while, and I felt privileged. And I said that I felt privileged to be able to do this, and I know that I've been mentioning it a few times, but it really is only by walking there that you can see some of the sights that we've been seeing. And it feels like when you're at the top of the mountain that your reward of these beautiful views is something tangible almost. And I will certainly take away some of these moments for the rest of my life. I hope that many of you feel the same way that I do when you do it. But before we hear how the past few days have unfolded, let's hear from our sponsor, Polar Steps. If you're heading out on a long hike this year, which I am, I've got something I think you're going to love. It's called Polar Steps. It's a travel tracking app that's going to become a favourite with hikers. You set your start date, let it run quietly in the background, and it maps your entire journey automatically, all on your own beautiful spinning 3D globe. And don't worry, the tracking feature uses about 4% of your battery on a single charge, so it's not going to kill your phone when you're out there. You can add photos and short journal entries as you go, so your map shows you where you were and your words remind you of what that day actually felt like. There's a light social layer too. Family and friends can follow along, or you can keep it completely private. As every hiker says, hike your own hike. And when you're done, you can relive the whole thing in the app or turn it into a stunning coffee table book with your route, stats, photos and stories. And did I tell you that it's entirely free to download and use? The only time you'll be paying anything is if you decide to turn your trip into a book. That's Polar Steps. Track it now, treasure it forever. Day number 126, Sunday. Jacobs Brook, mile 1782.7 to New Hampshire 25C, mile 1794.0 and 11.3 mile day. So for those of you paying attention, perk up your ears. This meant that my week's total mileage was 97.4 miles. Pretty good, eh? And a 17.4 mile credit, bearing in mind I'm trying to do 80 miles a week. That means there's a current running credit of 86 miles. What that effectively means is that I've just over a week in credit. Or to put it another way, I should be able to summit Katahdin a week earlier than I'd originally planned. I'm fully aware that I could use up, and I will use up, quite a bit of that credit in the next few weeks. So I'm still estimating a finish in Maine on 29th or 30th of September, but it may be earlier. I hope all that made sense. It was another one of those, beautiful breakfast mornings as I took another couple of hours to get out of camp. Fortunately, Nuke doesn't give me any jip about that. He just heads out and he gets going and he has his coffee, walks around a bit, has his cigarette, and then heads up the mountain. And we, at the very beginning of today, once I did eventually pack everything up, it was our first, the big climb of the day was right at the very beginning, which, as you know, I prefer. It was about 1,500 feet over just over 3 miles to the top of Mount Cube. So not all that bad, it seemed. Fortunately, it was another one of those, what I would call convenient mountains that gives you a break every now and then. And, what I mean by that is you'll walk up for, say, 500 feet, and then you'll go straight, flat, or even sometimes even slightly down for, 100 yards, 200 yards. And I keep the same speed when I'm doing that as I'm going up. So it's pretty slow, the whole thing. And then you start going up again. But my image from that day, and it's in my mind, is of turning a corner and just keep seeing rocks going up and up and up. For something that was only 1,500 feet over 3 miles, oh my gosh, it seemed to be so much more than that. Every now and then, though, we had tremendous views that showed my favourite view of clouds down below. And as we climbed higher, the views extended with even more cloud down below. It's another of those things I just cannot get enough of. Around lunchtime, I saw another of those super healthy looking sobos coming towards me. And then the closer she drew, the more I saw of her. And she called out my name, Mighty Blue, just as I recognised her. It was Margie Mims. Let me remember back in 2019, I think it was, I followed her on the podcast. And in fact, we actually met and interviewed face to face at the Boots Off hostel. 7 years later, like me, she's back on trail. She looked great, as all those Sobos seem to be. And she made the point, they start the Sobo hike, the toughest part of the trail, fresh. I mean, they don't have their legs, but they certainly start out fresh. And I think that may be one of the reasons they still look pretty good when they pass us, when we're all looking so beaten down. But the two of us took a selfie and then headed in opposite directions. I so regret that I missed the opportunity to interview her for the podcast. I had my headphone, my microphone with me, and I just didn't think about it. Sorry, Margie. Reach out when you finish and we can have you back on to talk about your Sobo. We had a plan to go all the way to Route 25 and Glen Cliff, which for me means the Hiker's Welcome Hostel. I stayed there on my two previous through hikes, 2014 and 2019. And I'm pretty sure I camped both times. But there's no camping now. Apparently there's an habituated bear somewhere around, although I never saw it. Still have not seen a bear, by the way. And a family of skunks, which apparently is not very pleasant for hikers. So it's now just a big bunkhouse, which is very nice, and some upstairs, I think, private rooms inside the hostel itself. And I know that when I went in 2014, that was where Lider-Knot, Lider-Knot, T-Bird and Trillium started talking about doing the whites together. Because I do feel that, this is quite a dangerous area of the trail. And, you're putting your life at risk in some ways with some of these descents, particularly the descents, when you're, excuse me, when you're literally holding onto the roots above to slide down a slick rock. So but that's where we actually got together. But as I say, we actually planned to go all the way to Route 25 in Glencliff for this day. But I was aware that we could cut that short at 25C and take a shuttle to Hiker's Welcome to get there early and get my podcast done for Monday morning. And in the end, Nuke and I had found Cube quite testing, so I only had to twist his arm to stop short, and we called the hostel to ask for a shuttle and to book the bunk room. Then, and it's not happened on this trip so far, all my resolve to get the show out just failed me. I had the time, I fell asleep on my bunk. I just couldn't get the mojo to get it done once I woke up. I find that once I get in the mode, once I'm in the mode to get the podcast done, I can push it through relatively quickly. Getting started for me, and by the way, this does sound like me getting out in the morning, doesn't it? Getting started just seems to take time, and I never got started that day. So the hostel I like the hostel. I know not everybody loves it, but I like the hostel very much indeed. And they've got great resupplies, one of the best resupplies I've seen on trail. They shuttle everywhere, and the crew is very friendly, very helpful, and I just love the place. Later on, I was coming out of the bunkhouse and I saw a lady called Uma McCall, and Uma is a fellow member of the Florida Appalachian Trail Club, and I knew she'd been hiking up here. I'd stayed last week or sometime in Vermont in with a guy called George Becht, and his wife Alice had been hiking with Uma up in New Hampshire, and I knew that already. And I was chatting with Uma, and we had got a selfie taken. She is planning to through hike the Appalachian Trail next year, age 81. Man, that is something. And if she does do that, if she follows through with that, I'm going to follow her on the trail next year. And then another treat. Remember Jessica, the blue-haired hiker, Bluebird, and who took 9.5 months to do the Appalachian Trail a couple of years ago with Iron Mike, and they finished at Harper's Ferry. And it was she had such a story to tell. I said to her, you should write your story down, because she has such a story to tell. Well, she lives nearby in Lincoln, and she drove me and Nuke out to Plymouth, I think it was. We were hoping to go to a brewery, but we couldn't make it in the brewery because it was about a 50-minute wait, and it would have been too late for us old people. And so we went to another bar, had something to eat and drink, and spent some time with Jessica. Lovely girl. She's still got the bluest hair I've ever seen in my life. But that was our evening, and we really enjoyed it. Day number 127, which was last Monday, NH 25C, Route 25C, mile 1794, to Route 25, mile 1798.9, a 4.9 mile Nero slackback back to Hiker's Welcome. Well, that's a winning combination straight away, isn't it? A Nero slackback. It was rain forecast, and we knew this was going to be the rainiest day for some days. And so, even though it wasn't too bad, we decided not to do Moosilauke on a wet day. You know, trying to avoid the rain, especially where you're sliding down some of these slick rocks and the roots are getting more and more. And I remember from my experience before that Maine was even more rooty than New Hampshire, but didn't really want to do it on a wet day. So we decided, let's just fill in this 4.9 miles and chill out for the next for the rest of the day, which worked out nicely. But we wanted to knock out obviously the 5 miles that we obviously cut short the previous day, so that kind of worked out. And Nuke and I went back on a shuttle to 25C. It was starting to spit a little bit when we got out, and we saw a lady in just draw up in her car, and she said, "Trail magic, perfect." we hadn't even tried to manifest it, and there was trail magic before our eyes. So I helped myself to, I think, a drink of something or other, maybe a Danish, I'm not terribly sure really. And we helped the lady set up because one of her friends came along, and because they knew it was going to rain, they brought along a tarpaulin to string between the two cars. That worked out. And so I don't know what it was like there because it started pouring later on. I say it fell on schedule really, and we spent much of the next, I think, hour and 3/4 getting gradually wetter, though not really uncomfortably so. You have to get quite heavy rain to get wet in the forest, or get really wet in the forest. So I don't mind it. I didn't put on a jacket or anything like that. I just got my base layer and pushed on through. And it was actually a very good way to knock out, the 5 miles to complete our steps all the way to Hiker's Welcome. I don't worry about rain these days like I've worried about in the past. I hardly ever put my jacket on. But when it rains heavily and you get caught in it, you probably kind of should do, because I want to keep my microphones and my phone dry as well. Then we had another visitor at lunchtime. So we got ourselves cleaned up and showered and put on some laundry before my old friend Cushy Life, or Sarah, turned up. Both, if those of you who have been listening for some time will probably remember Cushy as the leader of our little tramley back in 2019. And clearly she was our leader. We were all hiking Cushy's hike at the time. And she'd asked what we wanted to do. So I said, a bit of pizza and a beer would be nice, and we could have a little picnic here. So that's a winning combination. And she turned up with 2 personal pizzas, one for me and one for Nuke, and a couple of beers, and 4 beers. Great. And the 3 of us sat out the back undercover and chatted for over an hour and a half. It was like meeting Trigger again last year. We hadn't seen each other in some time, yet we fell straight back into the easy friendship that hikers develop on trail. I always remember Cushy as being probably the friendliest hiker I ever met. stopping to speak to everybody. And yes, I mean, literally everybody. She would not let anybody pass without a conversation. And, that reminds me, yeah, everybody we met on trail. And we'd met another lady called Yalla, and we asked what Yalla meant. Yalla, yalla, yalla. It meant, come on, hurry up. And whenever Cushy was talking, and I'm just remembering this now, Trigger would say, yalla, 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 which means let's get a move on. And anyways, yeah, that's what she did. And I've always felt privileged that I was lucky enough to hike with Trigger and Cushy back in 2019. And both of them are extremely special to me. And I shared this with Cushy. She knew it already. Whenever I wanted to hear the quiet of the woods again and the forest and just have no sounds around me, I'd say to Trig, hey Trig, we need to get out of Cushy range. So we'd start hiking faster and faster to get out of Cushy range, and suddenly we couldn't hear. And I'd say, we're out of Cushy range, Trig, we're good to go. Oh, she's funny. One of the great things about staying at Hikers Welcome that we bumped into several people we'd already met as they came into the hostel, including Cheshire and Chewy, a couple I interviewed back in Duncannon, I think it was, as well as No-No, a young guy I'd been hiking around before I got off several months ago. And he was such a nice kid. There were, I'm not patronising, because everyone's a kid to me, I know, but he was a young lad and he was a really nice fella. There were several others who I'd met in passing in the past, and it was good to catch up with these guys as well. The choice to take a Nero on this day worked out well, because we would have experienced that quite heavy rain had we gone to Moosilauke that morning, and I would really not have enjoyed it. I was in just no mood to do the mountain in such conditions. But I was really looking forward to the following day when the weather was looking far better. Day number 128, which was Tuesday, Kinsman Notch, mile 1808.3 to New Hampshire Route 25, mile 1798.9, a 9.4 mile Sobo slapback up and over Mount Moosilauke. So this was the day. I must admit that I was feeling pretty nervous taking the shuttle with a bunch of other people, including Nuke, forward to Kinsman Notch. Yes, we were shuttling forward to do Moosilauke Sobo, and that is the way a lot of people seem to do it. And the reason is this: even though it's steeper than, or in fact, probably because it's steeper on the way up and it's less steep on the way down, doing it this way avoids going down that incredibly steep path at the end of the day. I just would not want to do that, and I'll tell you why. There is a waterfall which runs for about a mile alongside trail, and literally alongside the trail. And even though the rocks and the wooden things that are bashed into the rocks, almost as footsteps, were wettish from the day before, with the splashes from the waterfall, I'm just really uncomfortable with the idea of going down that way. And I say each of my through hikes, I've gone Sobo, and I will never go Nobo on that part of the trail. I know there are some people who feel the need to go northbound all the time. Knock yourselves out. I'm never going to do that. Mind you, I'm never going to do this again anyway. So at 2,700 feet in 4 miles to the top, this is one of those straight up trails. Yet we found it far easier than we'd expected, and certainly easier than I remembered it was going to be. The reason I found it easier was because there was so much boulder scrambling and steps up. At no point was there an extended walk. It was all about taking our time, keeping our breathing regulated, and making that small necessary progress in incremental steps. Nearer the top, it starts to flatten out a bit, but the first couple of miles were near enough straight up. We soon came to the waterfall, which cascades for about a mile alongside all the way. Sometimes the path took us within feet of the rushing water, and I was extremely happy that we'd chosen this direction. And I mentioned those wooden steps built into the rock. How anybody did this before those steps, I just can't imagine, because the rock is incredibly smooth, and you do have to trust that these wooden steps are going to hold, but I think they have. In fact, there's only one place, and that was actually in the Kinsman's, where 2 had come loose. Wouldn't like to have been there when that happened, but yeah, they certainly help you make progress across rocks which look catastrophically dangerous. The trail started moving away from the waterfall and progress became less scary. But, I've got to say, when I'm saying scary, it's scary in that there is potential disaster at every step, but that apart, I'm loving this. This is really what I do. It's something that I've grown to love over the years, and I'm going to miss this part of it. This whole thing about New Hampshire is as spectacular as I remember, and beautiful, tough as hell, but really absolutely loving it, every moment of it right now. Then, with the trail and the climb flattening somewhat near towards the top, it was noticeable that the trees were getting shorter. We were about to get above tree line, and that is always a startling sight. I remember first time I did it in 2014, just emerging above the trees and giggling like a little girl, because I'd never seen anything like it. Felt to me like a bit of a moonscape, and those of you who have experienced it will know that it's one of those kind of seminal moments when you go above tree line for the first time. And so with the last couple of trees shorter than me, we emerged at that dramatic level and continued the path upwards towards the various cairns set on the trail. When you haven't got trees to mark your way, the white blazes are on the trees normally, so there were no trees. Sometimes they put it on a rock, but of course rocks can easily be moved. So the way they handle it up here, people over the years have set up cairns, these piles of rocks, and they show the way. I told you the other day how I'd knocked a cairn over, but that was in a kind of boulder field, so I didn't feel quite so bad about it. But yeah, they're very useful guides, certainly even more in Maine. They guide you across mountains where there are just no trees. And I know that in Franconia Ridge, which we're actually going to go up tomorrow, there'll be cairns along the way as well. At the top, there's the biggest cairn of all, the huge bundle of rocks, on which sits the Moosilauke sign, one of the most memorable for me in my past hikes. Saw a couple of young ladies up there. One of them had a 3-month-old baby strapped to her. I'm not entirely sure how comfortable I'd feel with that, but she seemed happy to bring a child up there to experience this beautiful day. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough sun to burn off all the cloud all around, and we were unable to get the views that I'd had in the past. But actually, Nuke found that more dramatic, and he and I took photos at the sign, and I immediately posted it on Facebook. If it's not on Facebook, it didn't happen. Then, of course, we had to go down again. This was nowhere near as difficult to climb down as it had been the climb up, though there is one point at which you must pay attention, as the trail splits into 3, and you need to take the very right trail to keep on track. It's a pretty uneventful walk down, actually, and we reached Route 25 and the walk back to Hiker's Welcome at around 1:15 p.m. The climb up and the climb down had taken us about 4.5 hours, with about a half hour or a 40-minute break at the top. I think we'd done pretty well. I wanted to hear how Nuke reacted to this, so the following morning we sat down and recorded. You can hear that after this. For me, I was happy to have got the first of the big whites out of the way, because I knew that much tougher days were ahead of us. At the same time, I also knew that we were about to get our minds blown by the spectacular scenery. So this is our Kingsman's Day, and I'm sitting here with Nuke, and I know we've spoken to Nuke before, but I just wanted his impressions on his first big mountain in the White Mountains, Moosilauke. What do you think then, Nuke?
It was gorgeous. Going above tree line for the first time and just getting to the top. And even though it was an overcast day, getting up to where it's just completely open, no trees to block your view, and being above that cloud line and looking down on top of the clouds was just absolutely stunning.
It is something else, isn't it? I'd like it to have been a whole lot clearer, because the 360 degree view up there is also quite stunning. But we missed that. So we're into New Hampshire. What were your first impressions of New Hampshire? Because I found it easier than last time, so that's kind of interesting for me.
Yeah, other than like we were talking the other night, like you start trading your days of judging what you're going to do from distance to now judging your day by the elevation changes. Was a definite change, but it hasn't been incredibly difficult yet, which kind of surprised me. I know we've got the worst kind of to come of some big climb days, but I think the terrain's a little easier than I expected. I think the trail maintainers do a good job of helping create the stair steps, and it makes it definitely an easier climb. But it hasn't been the nightmare I thought it was going to be.
No, and also slack bagging doesn't harm.
Very much. That's having that yesterday and today. It's definitely makes the climbs way more manageable, and if I can't recommend it enough to do some of these harder days if you want to get your miles in and get through the whites quick. It seems to be the way to go.
And the other thing we shouldn't underestimate is the power of losing weight yourself.
Correct, yeah.
I'm now 50 pounds down. You're what?
I'm just about 30 to 35. And if you figure that's a pack.
That's right, oh yeah.
You've lost your whole pack.
It's hard to believe when you pick that pack up that was on me somewhere.
Yep, and it definitely, you can tell it in your legs, but that's kind of the thing too of the trail legs. It's like, do I really have trail legs, or have I just lost enough weight that I don't feel the pack anymore?
Yeah. We've definitely both got hiker hunger.
Yeah, oh yeah. Like I said, I feel like Willy Wonka. All I do is eat candy.
That's right, yeah. So when we spoke actually on your, I don't know, third day, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was day 4 or 5.
Very early on. Yep. What about the rest of the hike so far? How's that gone for you?
It's had its ups and downs. Like I said, I had my why am I doing this kind of moment back in New York near West Point, and getting through that. Pretty much once I'd gotten through that moment, it's been great. I think doing the flip-flop route, you start off with those, untried legs, and you're constantly doing harder and harder and harder. Kind of each state's progressing more and more. Oh, yeah. So it kind of gives me some real good optimistic outlook of going south, because you're starting to get a little more of your ridge running days and go back to distance days and not elevation days. So it's definitely been an uplook, and the scenery is definitely getting nicer and nicer with these taller climbs, and it makes those hard days worth it when you're seeing those beautiful views that you can only walk to.
Yeah. When we went up Mount Cube the other day, we could look down on it was like a sea around us, and only bits of mountains sticking out, look like little islands.
Yep. And seeing that fog settling into the valleys where it almost looks like it's snow covered, like that's just a view, you don't get it when you're just sitting down in the town.
And what's your impression of the community out here?
Oh, it's great. Like we were talking last night of, staying that one extra day slack packing at the hostel, of how many people you've met that you have kind of lost track with their zeros, all of a sudden all come back in and you're back together. Everybody wants to help each other. You're all out here going through the same experience, and, if somebody needs tape or some string or some fuel, everybody's willing to share because they know one day they're going to need something.
That's right.
It's just putting that energy out there.
And I know your plan is you've got to attend a service for a fallen comrade, friend. And are you confident we can make it? Because we've got a plan. Yep. You're going to make it.
Yep. I think with how far we've got to go, and the kind of the days planned out of the weeks you were looking at, I think I don't think we'll have a problem finishing them. Even if we do some short days, we're making some pretty long days.
Yeah, we've got a 16-mile slack patch today, which helps. Yeah. Which certainly helps, yeah. Okay, well, look, I want you to succeed because I'm with you. So we definitely got to succeed together. All right, thanks for talking to us.
No problem.
Cheers. I'm putting the show together today behind the cabin of my friend Mike, a listener and a previous guest on the show. And sitting here with the trees all around me, it feels somewhat surreal, particularly given my home in Florida. I've got to say, mountains and forests are definitely the way to go. Tomorrow we're going to be going up and over Franconia Ridge, probably my favourite spot on the entire trail. I'm looking forward to both it and bringing my version of it to you in the next few days. I'll see you next time.